just talking about the election and just how we as believers navigate these seasons because elections always come up and that's the world we live in. Politics can be very divisive and kind of bring out sides in people that we aren't always expecting. But when it comes to voting and just talking, having conversations with other people about it, like how as believers do we navigate it? Because I think it's easy for a lot of us to kind of sit on our hands during these times. Like there was a study that I was reading. It said that 71% of the entire U.S. population identifies as a person of faith. And then take that 71%, which is about 210 million, something like that, split it in half, and only 51% of that group actually votes. So we're looking at over 100 million people that identify as believers, but they're not voting. So it's like, how do we go about like elections and, talking politics with other people? Um, Kind of put that out there to y'all.
I mean, during the election, like it was a rough time just for me because I was like, it's a lot of tension. Like everybody sees that on social media, in person, in friend groups. Like, there's a lot of tension. So I think the biggest thing for me was like one, like Pastor Greg's preaching that he did on the coming up to election really put it in perspective for me. Like vote on policy, not personality, because you can look at the person all day and judge off of that, but that's going to get you nowhere. It's going to get you down a hole where you're going to argue with people. You're going to end up judging the person, like instead of actually looking at the actual issues that are going on in the world, like stuff that we us as Christians should be worried about. That's what should be based on, regardless of who the person is. So I think when we start looking at the actual things that are being supported, that are not being supported, that are being approved, that are not being approved, that's when we have to actually like really look into it, study what's actually happening, the issues, instead of looking into the person.
Yeah. I think too, like you said, pastor addressing it. I think that's kind of something that even believers are like, is that something that the church should discuss openly? I believe that we are supposed to take a stand. Like this is a time to spread and share our faith, to support biblical values, but that takes leaders in the church, like pastor, addressing it. And is it always an easy conversation? I don't think it is, but it's necessary. So,
I think ultimately, what I've noticed, especially with this last election, is people being afraid to speak the truth because they're afraid of offending and maybe hurting somebody's feelings just because of their beliefs. And I think that's why it's so important to go along with what you said, to have somebody like Pastor to share his heart, which I mean, I'm sure as he was preparing, he knew that there would be some type of backlash or get something. But ultimately, I think it comes down to the fact that it's like you can either share this and be truthful with people, or you can care more about how somebody might perceive it when in reality we're dealing with someone's eternity at that point of like, are we too scared to step out in faith and share the truth, no matter, not to say no matter who it's going to hurt, but um, forgetting the idea that it might offend somebody. But if you know that, hey, this is biblical, this is the truth that I stand on, because somebody could get saved even in a political message. And so I think that's just the most important thing that I've learned with this last election is sometimes the truth hurts, but it's definitely necessary to have to hear it and to be open-minded and willing to accept it.
yeah. It was this past election season, it was very eye-opening to me because I grew up in a very political household. Politics was always discussed, and it was kind of like ingrained into my thinking was that, we're supposed to vote. Like that's just natural. Like, once you're old enough, go vote. And it took me like taking a step back and recognizing that not everyone grew up like that. Not everyone, had that belief. But as believers, it's finding that balance too, because I heard a lot of people say that they don't vote because they think it's just not going to make a difference. Like my one vote's not going to matter. But we look at studies, like I was talking about, that's over 100 million people. If they were to all think that and they just don't go vote, like that's a big deal. And it matters.
I mean, for me, for the longest time, I thought the same thing. I had the same mindset, like I'm not gonna vote. It doesn't make a difference because this is my third election that I've had the privilege of voting for, and the past two I voted for, like I see no difference. Like I'm casting my vote, and it's like I don't see America getting better. I don't see the country getting better. I don't see unity among the people. So like, what am I wasting my time for? But this election, like, was pretty crucial. I was looking at everything that was going on. I actually went out and I studied what the actual issues instead of just assuming what was going to happen or assuming what the person was doing. I went and like studied and saw what was going on. Me coming from an immigrant household, like I was always told, like when you vote for a certain party because that party is the one that's looking out for you. And don't get me wrong, like I love coming from. I'm very proud that I come from an immigrant household with my mom. I love it. I'm very proud of it, but that's not who I am as a person. I'm a child of God before I am anything else, and I really think that we need to put that in perspective over anything else because we need to vote for a kingdom-minded government system.
Yeah, I agree. Because this was the first, I've also been able to vote in 3 elections. And this is the first one that I actually took the time to research and study and figure out why I was voting for what I was voting for. Because, I mean, I grew up in a similar household of like, you turn 18 and you vote. And you got just the paper with your answers essentially of like, this is what you need to fill out and this is what you do. You go in, they scan it, they give you your ballot, you fill it out in a couple of seconds, and you go about the rest of your day and just hope for the best, essentially. But I think this most recent election, I think also it has to do with the fact of what we've been old enough now, like this generation, to see what these last 4 years look like, and whether we felt like a decision needed, something needed to be changed or not. But I was able to actually research the policies, the amendments, the different things that these people, the candidates, stood for, and it carries more weight behind that. Oh, it's just one vote, it doesn't mean anything. I think knowing what we're voting and why we're voting and the policies that we are voting for make it almost easier, and it makes you almost feel better, for lack of a better term, when you do vote and feel like you are making a difference because you know what you're voting for. In elections past, I had no clue what I was filling out. My parents said, here's your answer key. Go ahead, go vote.
I think a lot of the time that why it took me so long to get to that point was because I was always concerned and worried about expressing my opinion, and not mostly that I was scared to tell the truth. Cause I know the truth, like regardless of what's happening, like I know what the word says. But like what I didn't like was that the second that you brought up politics, it was always something like, "Oh, that's dumb. You're stupid. You're this." It was never a civil conversation. And just the type of person that I am, I'm putting my friendship first. Like if Danny's doing one thing and I'm saying the other, I'm putting the friendship first, and I'm just gonna automatically back down because I don't want her to feel like I'm trying to come at her. And that's just me. That's just me as a person. Like, so I think one of the reasons that we take so long, not take so long, that we struggle to vote, like voters that don't do it, is just because they're scared of that too. Like, I don't want to lose families. I don't want to lose friendships because of this, because it's not that big of a deal to lose long life friendships for. So I think that's another reason why people our age don't vote. Like,
People
it's just
take it so
out of the
to
line,
heart,
like out of pocket.
I think too, and this might be like the churchy thing to say. I think it's just so important to, I mean, we got our ballots and I went to my little thing, and I mean, I prayed over the ballot before I even started filling out the circles. And I asked, like, Lord, I want your will to be done with these decisions that I'm making. If this is your will, I mean, we know you have a plan for this country, and I felt at peace knowing that no matter who was elected, or obviously we had which way we wanted it to go, but ultimately, like, Jesus is king. I think that's also where our generation has lacked, where it's like these candidates and these people put in these positions are like the end all be all. And if we don't get it exactly how we want it, our life is over and we have no rights and we can't speak up and we can't say anything. But I think I mean, you make that decision whether you allow that to happen or not. So I just think we also allow people to carry too much weight in our lives and the decisions that we make because of that.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, you know what, God, I want your will to be done in this. And if it's not what I think it should be, I'm still going to put my trust in you and know that, like, through you, we're going to be fine. We'll be good. And I mean, if that means he came back sooner, then he came back sooner.
Yeah.
But
It's Because at the end of the day, like you said, Jesus is king. And he's on the throne regardless of who gets elected. And I had to come to a point where I was like, I already put my vote in, and if it goes the other way, he's still in control of it all.
Mhm.
And I think at times we can see some of the people that don't vote, they're like, what's the point? Like, Jesus has the final say. But we still have, I believe we've been blessed with a freedom and an opportunity from the Lord to vote, to have a say in these things, because it affects us in our local government, our national government. So this affects our education, our living, our safety as a country.
Mhm.
So yes, Jesus is always in control, but I think we aren't to take the blessing and opportunity to vote lightly.
Yeah.
Like it's a privilege that we get to have a say in who gets elected.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like Danny said, it's about like just being educated too. Politics is a very emotional game. It gets very personal. And honestly, if you listen to enough speeches, they're trying to connect with you just to get a vote. And if you're not rooted in your faith, in the word, you can find yourself looking at them as your savior, but it's like, like that's just a person with a title that the Lord's placed.
Mm-hmm.
Are you following the man or are you following Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
And so this entire election season, I've found myself like on social media scrolling, and I'm like, I keep hearing debates and these speeches, and I found it affecting how I looked at the world or what my life was going to look like. Like, no, we need to be in the word constantly. And again, as believers, the election season is so important because it's an opportunity to spread the light and spread the gospel and to put our foot down for biblical values and foundations.
I feel like a lot of times as well, people forget that you're not voting for like a celebrity. You're voting for a person of service. If you really think about it, like the president is servicing the country, the people. So like, don't you can't look at them as a role model, as a friend, with an emotional mindset. You have to look at it like I'm voting for you to do a job, and I'm
Mhm.
trusting that you're going to do the job correctly,
Mhm.
that it should be done the way that you're saying it's going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like people also don't forget that part that you're basically voting in a servant for the country, basically
Mhm.
to speak on the country's behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean to go along with what you said about just sticking to the word and the biblical foundation is, I mean, man's word can change. That we can say one thing and do something else, but the one thing that is never changing is the Bible and Scripture and the things that Jesus has have already told us in that. So I think that's another thing that we kind of like. I'll admit, like it's not something I'm always thinking about or that is just on the forefront of my mind. Is just, I mean, I can tell you, hey Vic, we're gonna go to McDonald's for lunch, and by the time I get out of here, well, we want something completely different, so I just leave and go somewhere else. Like it's so easy for us to change promises we make or things that we say, but that's why I think we always have to remember to turn back to God's word because that will never change.
People will feel this. The Lord will not.
Amen.
Yep.
And there's always the other side of it, right? We talk the voting. What's the aftermath? Like, what's our response after the next president, governor, whoever's elected? Because at the end of the day, say the person we didn't vote for gets elected, are we going to be honoring and to our authority or not?
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Bible, like Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar, definitely wasn't their ideal person to be above them, but they were still called to honor their leader. And they didn't worship him though. And that was the biggest thing.
Mhm.
They honored him, but they didn't worship him. And I think we as a people, and not in believers, but like as Americans, we need to recognize that whoever's in leadership, God has placed there. And we are called to honor them.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to be their biggest fan? No. Do we have to like everything they say? No, but we can't allow our lives to be so centered around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, that's why we see so many like you were saying, like families, like friendships, like there's so much brokenness when it comes to politics because we have a skewed vision of it.
Yeah.
I lost so many followers and friends because of this past election. I was like, it hurt. But it's when we always need to be praying for them. But again, it's recognizing who's in control and are we honoring whoever our leader is.
Yeah, I was I mean, I've never been very outspoken as far as like on social media or just in general about politics or the way that I vote or the things like my values in certain things. But I kind of came across this past election. I have two people that I've become friends with that are believers, they serve, that have different opinions than I did. But if if I just continued to like kind of keep my mouth shut and not say anything, I would start to notice that when they would say things, if I wasn't saying something back, they thought I was agreeing with them. So I had to learn really quickly that um, I need to stand on what I believe and what I value, so that way there is no room for a misconception or a misunderstanding. And because I don't want somebody walking around thinking that I value one thing or I think I'm okay with certain things just because I didn't feel the need to open my mouth because I wanted to avoid an argument or avoid losing a friendship. But I do agree, like you said, it hurts. It's not going to feel good, but ultimately, I mean, it didn't feel good when Jesus was being whipped and beat and hung on the cross, and that doesn't even come close to comparison of losing a couple friendships or losing some followers on social media. But with all that to say, because I didn't keep my mouth shut, I was able to speak truth to those friends, and they were able to grasp a better understanding of why I chose what I chose and why I voted the way I voted and the policies that I stood for. So that's just like another reminder the Lord's going to put us in uncomfortable situations, and we have to be willing to embrace the uncomfort in order to grow and to essentially just be honoring to Him in that. Like, it's not going to feel good, but you'll be able to see the blessings and the fruit that come, and it might not be right away, but I've learned that they do come. So
Coming into like adulthood and like into these spaces where decisions have to be made, I've always been the person to straddle the fence. So it's like, oh, if I stay right in the middle, like don't go left, don't go right, don't say this, don't say that. Like if you stay right in the middle, you'll be fine. Like no one will get offended, no one will get mad at you. But the Lord quickly showed me how dangerous it is to ride the fence because you feel like it's fine, it's a comfort. It's not. It's more dangerous than you actually picking a side. So I think around this time around, like the Lord really showed me, you need it. You need to speak up. Like there's no more backing down. There's no more just staying quiet and naughty. Like you need to stand on what you believe. And if that's what you believe, you need to speak it when the time is right. Because you don't have to go around like a crazy person just expressing everything all at once. So it's like a time and place for everything, but you need to make a decision.
Yeah.
It's gonna, it's gonna separate us because we're set apart from this world. And I had conviction because, again, I was like, I don't want to say certain things because I don't want someone to get upset or, to unfollow me or block me, whatever. But if I can't speak up about these things, how am I supposed to stand up and speak up about Jesus, which is what truly matters at the end of the day? And at the root of it all, it's love. Even when someone were to spit in our face or mock us, the things that Jesus went through, like we need to love regardless of the outcome, regardless of how someone treats us or responds to us. Like we need to speak truth in love. And again, as Christians, that's why I believe it's so important to vote and to take part. I'm not saying go run a political campaign or go find a seat in office, but like just to do your part to stand up for what you believe for truth. And I think we saw a big swing in that this time around. I mean, you look back at 2020 and that election, I think it was polar opposite of this time around. And again, I think there was an awakening in believers, and we saw that this time.
I think to touch on what you said about sharing it in love is probably one of the most important things that we can do as far as in the election, because we see both sides of the spectrum, very extreme, not the spectrum, but you know what I'm talking about. Very, like, people that are very far right, very far left, that take things to the extreme and almost try and push their values and their beliefs on other people. And you're a horrible person if you don't think what I think, if you don't say what I say. And I think that's why we struggle with so many people not to say the middle, but with the fears that we already touched on of not really wanting to speak up and whatnot. But I think if we approach it, like Dom said, just in a loving way and not making somebody feel like they're a horrible person for thinking the way they think, I think we just need to come from a perspective of they just don't know. They don't know. And so to think about, if you go to somebody like a toddler who doesn't know something yet, to go at them aggressively versus going at them in love. Like the only way they're actually going to receive it is in love. Like you can scream at them and just be aggressive towards them, and they'll never be able to receive it. They're automatically going to be shut off to it. So that way, if somebody else comes at them, and even if that other person is trying to come at them in love, they're already shut off because of the way that they were approached prior. So I think now is just such an important time to, even outside of election, just anything as far as sharing our faith, Christianity, just anything that we deal with encountering people, is if we don't approach it in love, the idea that we can completely shut them off to the idea of having a relationship with the Lord, if that's what we leave at the forefront of our mind, I think the way that we go about things as Christians would just be completely different and would be so much better for us, essentially.
Yeah.
I think that now that it's all past, all is done, all decisions have been made, like I think the response should be like, I still love you. Like I still respect you. I don't look at you less than or more than because of a decision that you made. Like I'm still going to express, if you ask me, I'm still going to express, I'm still going to stand on what I believe, and I'm going to explain it to you. But there's a way for you to do that without belittling someone, because that's not going to get you anywhere. It's going to cause strife. It's going to cause all these things that don't need to happen when it's just a simple conversation, if you both choose to have a conversation. So I think that the response now should be like, I still love you, I still respect you, I don't look at you any differently than I did yesterday. So
Yeah, I agree. Because my parents have always said, you don't know what you don't know. So some people, like the two girls that I had already shared about, it was actually my dad was able to have a conversation with one of them, and she voted differently. But I mean, it was not even a full week after the election. She was like, man, if only I would have known this a week ago. So that's why it's so important to just, if you feel it on your heart, to not be scared to just step out in faith and do it, because it's not easy.
No, it's not. But at the end of the day, like as Christians, we have our voice matters. We have influence, whether that's the person that you're sitting next to during service or, the 1,000 followers you have on Instagram. Like your voice matters, and you have an opportunity to influence. Are you going to influence for Jesus, or are you going to influence for yourself or for the world? And I think that's, if you stay silent and you just sit on your hands, your choice is kind of made there. But we are called to speak up, and is it going to be easy? No. You might not get the best response, but we got to follow what Jesus displayed for us when he was on the earth.
Yeah.
No choice is a choice. For sure.
Yep.
That's big.
Saying nothing is still saying something.
Awesome.